Welcome back to MitchCraft. Grab your tea, your coffee, your emotional support anxiety meds, whatever keeps you stable in this country. Because today, we're going into the wonderful world of BEE. Yes, that BEE. Broad based Black economic empowerment, the policy that was supposed to be the justice buffet of South Africa, but somehow turned into a members only club with a very questionable guest list. Let's talk about it.
MitchCraft Online, come on in, join the talk, let's begin.
Now, before the comment section starts turning into a cage match, calm down. We're talking history. We're talking impact. We're talking how something that started with genuine intention got twisted into the pitfall of nonsense we see today. The point is simple. Racism didn't magically disappear after 1994, but neither did stupidity. And yet, here we are, sandwiched between the two. Picture South Africa in the 90s. Apartheid freshly dismantled, people finally allowed to exist without state sanctioned segregation, and an economy where almost everything land, company, wealth, opportunity sat comfortably in the hands of the white minority. BEE was introduced as a way to set the scale straight. Not perfectly, not instantly, but at least directionally. The idea was simple: rebuild the economy by allowing people who had been locked out for generations to finally step inside. And honestly, that did make sense. You cannot talk about fairness if half the country is locked outside the building, waving through the window. So, in theory, BEE was the national, we're fixing this button, a policy meant to widen opportunity, build black ownership, and gradually balance an economy that had been racially skewed for decades. And for a moment, for some, it did create real opportunity. Not a utopia, but progress for the most part. Early on, you actually saw the shifts. Black South Africans entering corporate leadership, SMME support programs, more diverse workplaces, companies scrambling to transform, not always perfectly, but at least visibly. For the first time, a kid growing up in a township could imagine one day being the CEO of something bigger than a spaza shop. There was hope, there was momentum, even some of the bureaucracy made sense. The message was clear. The economy was opening up. If the story stopped here, we'd probably call BEE a success story. But this is South Africa. We do not do simple, we do plot twists. Here's where the Rainbow Nation's paint starts peeling. Over time, BEE shifted from broad based empowerment to something a lot narrower. Instead of lifting entire communities, it increasingly benefited political connected elites and corporate insiders who knew exactly how to navigate the system. We created a pipeline, and somehow only the same surname seemed to pass through it. Somewhere between the policy revisions, the compliance scorecards, and the tender economy, BEE mutated into a gatekeeping mechanism instead of a generational upliftment tool. Corporates figured out how to comply without meaningfully empowering anyone. Fronting became a sport, ownership structures were shuffled around like accounting magic tricks. And of course, the average person, black, colored, Indian, white, is sitting there wondering what the hell is being empowered exactly, because it certainly doesn't feel like them. Then the system tightened even further. In 2025, the Employment Equity Amendment Act came into effect, giving the Labour Minister the power to set demographic targets across multiple sectors of the economy. Companies with more than 50 employees must now submit a 5-year employment equity plan aligning their workforce demographics with national targets through 2030. And if they don't comply, they can face fines of up to 1.5 million rand or a percentage of their annual turnover. And they risk losing their employment equity compliance certificate, which is required to do certain types of business with the state. So when people say the system is fading away, the legislation suggests the exact opposite. It's expanding, and here's where things get even more complicated. If you're a capable, qualified, experienced white man entering the job market today, you may find yourself quietly pushed to the back of the line because companies are scrambling to meet demographic targets. At the same time, colored and Indian South Africans, communities that were also heavily disadvantaged under apartheid, often find themselves stuck in a strange middle ground, not prioritized enough for certain targets, not exempt enough from the consequences. You're either not black enough or not priority enough, depending on which department you ask and how tired the official is that day. What was once designed to include now often excludes. What was meant to broaden opportunity has in some cases narrowed it. Let's talk about real people instead of policy documents. So you've got graduates sending hundreds of CVs into the void. Colored white Indian graduates who struggle to find entry points not because they lack the qualifications, but because their demographic category isn't helping a company meet its targets. At the same time, many black professionals who absolutely deserve their positions still have to deal with the poisonous assumption that they were only hired for BEE points. That is not empowerment. It's sabotage. It undermines competence, it fuels resentment, and it turns workplaces into passive aggressive battlegrounds. Instead of building unity, the system often ends up dividing people who are all trying to survive the same broken economy. And while citizens argue with each other, the real structural problems remain untouched. A stagnant economy, elite corruption, collapsing infrastructure, and a government that often seems allergic to accountability. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot build a strong economy on artificial scoring systems. You cannot fix inequality by weakening merit. You cannot uplift the poor by enriching the already powerful. Businesses are not just debating this in boardrooms. Several business groups and political parties have taken government to court over the new employment equity targets, arguing they effectively function as racial quotas. The government insists they are simply numerical targets. Sure. Which is one of those sentences that technically explains something while also explaining absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, investors grow cautious, businesses relocate, and job creation slows down. And the official response often sounds like this: South Africans need to work harder and stop complaining. Right. Because that has always been the magical solution to potholes, broken railways, water contamination, rolling blackouts, and a public education system where a 30% pass mark somehow qualifies as success. Where's my participation trophy? It's giving gaslighting with confidence. Imagine if BEE had stayed closer to its original purpose: uplift the poor, not the connected, empower based on real disadvantage, not rigid racial categories, invest in skills, education, entrepreneurship, grow the economy instead of shrinking the job pool. Imagine a system where anyone who had been genuinely disadvantaged, black, colored, Indian, white, could access support based on their actual circumstances, not politics, not checkboxes, just reality. That would have been real empowerment. BEE was supposed to heal a wound. Instead, it became infected by greed, incompetence, and the obsession with looking transformed instead of actually being transformed. But alas, South Africa is not doomed. This country has survived worse with less. Real empowerment is still possible, but it requires policies that lift entire communities, not systems that quietly concentrate opportunity among the already powerful. And that's the story of how a policy meant to empower millions slowly became a system that mainly empowers paperwork. South Africa deserves real economic transformation and definitely not transformation theater. Got enough of that in Parliament. This has been MitchCraft Online. Thanks for listening. If you're listening on Spotify, don't be shy about hitting that follow button. And if you're listening on YouTube, please do subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
MitchCraft Online, come on in, join the talk, let's begin.